Hi, I'm Jennifer Chen, and this is the story of how my in-laws learned that treating family like outcasts can have devastating consequences. Sometimes the quietest person in the room holds the most power, and my story proves just that. I met David Wong during my final year of computer engineering. He was charming, driven, and seemed different from his traditional Chinese family. We fell in love quickly, and despite his parents' initial reservations about my mixed heritage, David stood firm in his decision to marry me, or so I thought. The problems began subtly. My mother-in-law, Lisa Wong, would make small comments about my appearance, my cooking, and especially my career choices. A proper Chinese wife stays home to care for her family, she'd say during our weekly family dinners, her disapproval evident in every word. My father-in-law, Richard Wong, was worse in his own way. He simply pretended I didn't exist. I could handle their behavior because David would usually defend me, albeit quietly. But everything changed when I became pregnant with our first child. The Wongs owned Wong Technologies, a mid-sized tech company that had been struggling in recent years. Richard's outdated management style and resistance to innovation had caused them to lose market share to newer, more agile competitors. David worked there as vice president of operations, always trying to please his father while gently suggesting modernization. What nobody knew, not even David, was that I had been building something of my own. During the 5 years of our marriage, I'd launched a tech startup focused on AI-driven supply chain solutions. Operating under my maiden name and through a series of shell companies, I'd managed to keep my success completely separate from my married life. My company, Next-Gen Solutions, had quickly become one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the region. I never planned to use my success as a weapon. In fact, I'd hoped to help Wong Technologies modernize once I felt established enough. But fate had other plans. It was during the most important week in Wong Technologies' history. They were pursuing a merger that could save their failing company. Richard had organized a crucial family dinner where potential investors would be present. I was 3 months pregnant at the time. The day before the dinner, my mother-in-law called. Jennifer, her voice dripped with false concern, about tomorrow's dinner. We've decided it would be best if you didn't attend. I gripped my phone tighter. Excuse me. Well, you see, in traditional Chinese culture, pregnant women are considered unlucky during business dealings. We can't risk anything going wrong tomorrow. I'm sure you understand. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Have you discussed this with David? Of course. He agrees it's for the best. Family company first. You know how it is. My heart sank as I realized my husband hadn't even warned me. When he came home that evening, I confronted him. Mom called you? He loosened his tie, not meeting my eyes. Look, it's just one dinner. Dad's really stressed about this merger, and if Mom thinks having a pregnant woman there might make our investors uncomfortable. Do you hear yourself? I interrupted. You're letting them exclude your wife, the mother of your child, because of a superstition. David ran his hands through his hair, frustration evident. Please, Jen, don't make this harder than it needs to be. It's just business. Just business, I repeated slowly. Fine, I'll stay home. He looked relieved, completely missing the steel in my voice. Thanks for understanding, honey. I'll make it up to you. That night, as David slept peacefully beside me, I made some calls. As CEO of Next-Gen Solutions, I had connections he couldn't imagine. Within hours, I knew everything about Wong Technologies' potential merger, including things Richard Wong probably wished I didn't know. The next morning, I kissed David goodbye as he left for work, then went to my home office and began setting things in motion. The investors Richard was courting had a reputation for being traditional and superstitious. Exactly why my mother-in-law didn't want a pregnant woman at dinner. But they also had a reputation for being ruthlessly practical when it came to business. I spent the day making calls and sending emails. By evening, as my in-laws were hosting their precious dinner, I had arranged for Nexion Solutions to make a competing offer to the company Wong Technologies hoped to merge with, an offer that was significantly better than what Richard could provide. But I wasn't done. I also reached out to Wong Technologies' biggest clients, many of whom were already quietly using Nexion services on the side. By midnight, as David returned home smelling of expensive wine and success, 3 of Wong Technologies' top 5 clients had privately agreed to transition all their business to Nexion within the next quarter. "How was dinner?" I asked sweetly as David loosened his tie. "Perfect," he beamed, completely oblivious. "The investors loved everything about us. Dad thinks we'll have the merger locked down by next week. Maybe then everyone can relax a little." I smiled, thinking about the emails sitting in Richard Wong's inbox, waiting to be opened tomorrow morning. "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so glad everything worked out." David kissed my forehead. "Thanks for being so understanding about missing dinner. Mom was right. Everything went perfectly without any complications." I placed a hand on my stomach, feeling our baby move. Yes, I suppose keeping the complicated things away does make life easier. For now. As David fell into a satisfied sleep, I stayed awake, watching the minutes tick by. In 6 hours, Richard Wong would arrive at his office and discover that his miracle merger had fallen apart overnight. In 7 hours, he would learn that his biggest clients were jumping ship. And in 8 hours, he would find out exactly who owned the company that had orchestrated his downfall. Sometimes the biggest mistake you can make is underestimating the quiet ones. My in-laws were about to learn that lesson the hard way. But this was just the beginning. The real drama would unfold at tomorrow's emergency board meeting, where more than just business secrets would be exposed. The next morning, I dressed carefully in a tailored maternity suit, choosing a deep blue that projected both power and femininity. David had already left for work, called in early by his father for what he assumed would be merger paperwork. He had no idea he was walking into a storm of my creation. I waited precisely 2 hours before heading to Wong Technologies' headquarters. Long enough for Richard to discover everything, but not long enough for him to form a coherent response. Timing, after all, is everything in both business and revenge. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since dawn. First with messages from David. "Dad's going crazy. Something's wrong with the merger. All our major clients are threatening to leave. Emergency board meeting in 2 hours. Don't worry about anything." Then from my mother-in-law. "This is all your fault somehow. I know it. You've cursed our family with your presence. David never had bad luck before you came along." I smiled at that last one. They had no idea what real bad luck looked like. Not yet. The security guard at Wong Technologies recognized me as David's wife and waved me through, despite not having an appointment. Another oversight in Richard's management style. Poor security protocols. I took the elevator to the top floor, where the board meeting was already in progress. I could hear the shouting before I reached the conference room. How could this happen overnight? Richard's voice boomed. Yesterday, they were ready to sign. The Nexion offer was just too good, someone else explained. We couldn't match their technology or their terms. Nexion? I've never even heard of them. I chose that moment to open the door. The scene inside was chaos. Richard stood at the head of the table, his face red with rage. David sat beside him, tie loosened, looking shell-shocked. The board members, all Richard's old friends, sat in various states of distress. My mother-in-law hovered in the corner, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. "You've heard of them now," I said quietly, but my voice carried across the room. All heads turned toward me. David jumped to his feet. "Jen, what are you doing here?" "Mrs. Wong." Richard's voice dripped with disdain. "This is a private board meeting. Family members are not welcome." I smiled, pulling a folder from my briefcase. "Actually, I'm here as the CEO of NextGen Solutions. I believe you've been trying to reach me all morning." The silence that followed was deafening. David's face went pale. Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. My mother-in-law dropped her handbag. "That's impossible," Richard finally sputtered. "NextGen is run by someone named Jennifer Chen." "My maiden name," I explained, taking a seat at the table. "I never changed it professionally." It's amazing how many assumptions people make when they don't bother to look deeper. You're the one who killed our merger?" David's voice was barely a whisper. "The same way you killed my dignity last night." I turned to face him. "Yes, honey. It turns out pregnant women aren't so unlucky after all. Just ask our investors." "Oh wait, they're my investors now." My mother-in-law found her voice. "You deceitful little." "Careful, Lisa." I cut her off. "You might want to hear my offer before you finish that sentence." I opened my folder and began distributing documents to the board members. "Wong Technologies is now facing a crisis. Your major clients are leaving, your merger has failed, and your technology is years behind the competition." "My competition, but I'm willing to offer a solution." Richard's face had turned from red to purple. "We don't need your charity." "It's not charity," I continued calmly. "It's business. NextGen will acquire Wong Technologies at a fair market value. All employees will keep their jobs, though there will be some changes in senior management, of course." "You can't do this," my mother-in-law shrieked. "This company is our family's legacy." I stood up slowly, one hand resting on my visible baby bump. "Family? Last night you said I wasn't family. You excluded me from a family dinner because I'm pregnant. You've spent years treating me like an outsider. Well, now you get to experience what being an outsider really feels like." The board members were already reading through my offer, murmuring among themselves. They could see the numbers as clearly as anyone. Wong Technologies wouldn't survive without this deal. David finally spoke up, his voice shaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" "The same reason you never told me about last night's dinner. Some things are just business, right?" One of the board members cleared his throat. "Mr. Wong, this offer, it's very generous. More than fair, given our current situation." Richard slumped in his chair, defeated. "How long have you been planning this?" "I haven't been planning anything. I built my company through hard work and innovation. Everything you could have had if you'd been willing to look past your prejudices and traditions. I would have happily helped modernize Wong Technologies if you'd ever seen me as more than just David's unfortunate choice of wife." I turned to the board members. "The offer expires in 24 hours. I suggest you review it carefully. Unlike some people, I don't mix business with superstition." As I turned to leave, David caught my arm. "Jen, wait. We can talk about this." I gently removed his hand. "Yes, we need to talk, but not here." I'll be at home when you're ready to discuss our future, both personal and professional. My mother-in-law made one last attempt. You'll regret this. No good fortune comes to those who betray family. I paused at the door. You taught me that family is about more than blood or marriage. It's about respect, acceptance, and support. Tomorrow, I become your boss. Whether I also remain your daughter-in-law depends on what happens when David comes home tonight. The aftermath was both better and worse than I expected. The board accepted my offer unanimously. They had no choice, really. Richard took early retirement, unable to face working for his daughter-in-law. My mother-in-law stopped attending family functions, claiming illness whenever I was present. David surprised me. After hours of intense conversation that night, he finally understood the depth of pain his family's treatment had caused me. He chose to stay, both in our marriage and at the company, though now working under my leadership. It took time, but he learned to stand up to his parents properly, especially after our daughter was born. These days, Wong Technologies exists only in old business records. Next-Gen Solutions has become one of the top tech companies in the country. Richard and Lisa still struggle to accept their new reality, but they've learned to keep their superstitions to themselves, especially around their granddaughter. As for me, I kept my maiden name and my position as CEO. My daughter will grow up knowing that her mother doesn't need anyone's permission to take a seat at the table, any table. And if someone tries to exclude her, she'll know exactly what to do: build her own table, bigger and better than theirs. The company's annual family dinner is coming up next week. Everyone's invited, even my in-laws, assuming they're not too superstitious to attend a dinner hosted by their pregnant daughter-in-law. Yes, we're expecting our second child, and this time, nobody dares to call it bad luck. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about succeeding so spectacularly that they have no choice but to watch from the sidelines, regretting every moment they underestimated you. And if they're lucky, maybe they'll learn something about family, respect, and the true meaning of good fortune along the way.